It's now my privilege to introduce our 2016 graduate commencement speaker. Dr. Larry Nyland currently serves as the superintendent of the Seattle School District, but he regularly identifies himself as a great friend of Seattle Pacific University. He's a Seattle native, a graduate of Roosevelt High School, and he earned his undergraduate and graduate degrees, including a doctorate in educational administration from the University of Washington. While all his academic credentials are from that other university, his connection to SPU nonetheless has a long history. When accepting our invitation this year to be the graduate commencement speaker, Dr. Nyland included a note. He said, "I have a picture of me as a 3-year-old in the Loop, celebrating my father's graduation. I lived on campus with my wife, Kathy, as she graduated from SPU. My sister and her husband graduated from SPU. My father-in-law and sister-in-law attended SPU, and I was the first graduate school hire as associate professor in 1993 and was on the graduate faculty of the School of Education for 4 years." So he has a long history with SPU, but he has an even longer history in K-12 education. He began as a teacher in Gig Harbor and then spent some time in Alaska. He's held a number of school administrative posts around the state, including Pasco, Highline, Shoreline, Marysville, and now Seattle. Dr. Nyland's 9-year tenure as superintendent of the Marysville School District is particularly noteworthy. When he arrived, he faced a very challenging setting. When he began in 2004, there had been a 49-day teacher strike that had resulted in declining enrollment, low graduation rates, and a community that had not approved a school bond issue in 16 years. But by strengthening relationships with teachers and staff, community engagement with families, and building partnerships with the business community, local service organizations, and the Tulalip tribes, he was able to rebuild and renew the school district. The Marysville district stabilized enrollment, won voter approval for a $118 million bond issue, and working with the staff, he was able to raise graduation rates by a whopping 22%. In 2007, he was named Superintendent of the Year by the Washington Association of School Administrators. And he was also finalist for National Superintendent of the Year. So he has a long history working in K-12, and he has had a long history at SPU. He continues to teach as an adjunct, to serve on advisory boards, and is a frequent participant in various School of Education events. Most importantly, for those who know him, they are quick to tell me that Dr. Nyland is a model of what it means to be a servant leader. He's a humble man, he's not overly impressed with himself, and he's always interested in doing whatever he can to help others succeed. And so we are very honored by his willingness to bring this year's commencement address. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Larry Nyland to the podium.
Thank you. What an honor and what a privilege to be here to celebrate this momentous day with each of you. President Martin, Provost Van Duzer, deans, distinguished faculty, parents, and most especially our successful graduates today. I'm delighted to have this opportunity to share with you a few notes from a lifetime journey of going with God and leave some parting thoughts with you as you begin that next chapter in your life. To our graduates, congratulations. You've weathered so many challenges along the way, balancing family, balancing career, all of that homework that needs to be accomplished. You've figured out how to navigate the challenges of parking and finding enough time for sleep and a lot of those things that go with a rigorous graduate program. And here you are. You've completed a remarkable milestone in your life, and you're ready for what lies ahead. Some of you have detailed plans for what that might look like, and others maybe are less certain about what that future looks like. We live in interesting times. Research tells us that each of us holds a job for about 4 years at a time. That means that most of us look forward to a lot of change in our future. And many of you will hold jobs that maybe don't even exist today. Maybe you'll form the new Amazon or the new Expedia for our area. All of you no doubt wonder what opportunities, what challenges, what options lie ahead. Welcome to the beginning of the rest of your life. Let me encourage you to make plans, invest in those plans, and at the same time hold those plans lightly as opportunities and challenges come your way. For me, in my life story, I probably began my career full of myself and eager to climb mountains. And as I've gone through my career, have had numerous opportunities to confront those challenges and the opportunities to be humbled along the way. So I encourage you to make those plans, hold them loosely, and be prepared for the opportunities that God puts before you. One of the metaphors for life is to have that idea of a roadmap. I began my career with 2 degrees in cartography. That's map making. And I never worked a day as a map maker. God had other plans. Married with 2 children, I became a teacher, never intending to become a principal. God had other plans. I became a principal in 1974 when, kind of shortly after, the billboard went up saying, "With the last person leaving Seattle, please turn out the lights." And I went to kind of the remotest part of the universe, Dillingham, Alaska, a small school of 400 students where I was principal. I'd been there all of about 2 months when the superintendent came to me and said, "Have you ever thought about being a superintendent?" Not really. But after he explained to me that there'd be 21 new superintendent jobs in the state of Alaska the next year, and the fact that he would teach the courses that I needed for a certificate, and the fact that there was no funding and I would not have a job the following year, I became a superintendent. God had other plans. So life doesn't always follow the roadmap that we've placed before ourselves. A few years ago, I began sending postcards to my then 10-year-old granddaughter, wherever I was in the world or in the States or around Washington. And talk about old school. It's kind of hard to find postcards sometimes these days, unless you're in Seattle or some tourist spot. One of my first do-it-yourself postcards came from Seattle Pacific, by taking one of the promo folders that we have and cutting it out and using it as a postcard. So in my remaining remarks for you today, I want to give you a mental postcard, trying to get on the back of a postcard what I think I've learned about a journey of life in 4 lines or less on the back of a postcard. So my postcard to you as you graduate and move on to do great things in the world is the logo, the lamp of knowledge, hard work, hard-won knowledge that you've accumulated here at Seattle Pacific, and the God's Spirit alive and working in each of us. And on the back, I would have the heading on it, "Go with God," and immediately behind us is the welcome sign that greets you as you come in on 3rd and Bortona. And on the back of that sign from the class of 1992 is Micah 6:8. What does God ask of us but to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with God? So line 1 on the postcard, if you will, would be to know what God requires of us believe that each of us has that God-given gift in us where our deep passion meets the deep needs of our time. Find that deep passion, be open to God's leading, and be prepared to go with God in that life's journey. Second line on that postcard would be to do justly. Now more than ever, our society needs men and women who will stand in the gap and do justly by building bridges of understanding across our differences, whether those be economically, racially, politically. We need togetherness, and we need every one of you working together to find solutions to some of our most challenging issues that face us in today. I love the way that Seattle Pacific lives up to that mission of doing justly, whether it's providing tutors for the neediest students in Seattle Public Schools, whether it's the initiatives underway as being a catalyst for racial justice, whether it's being welcoming a homeless camp here that was unwelcome other places. As you look at life's journey and where it might lead you, be sure to do that with courage and integrity as you do justly. The third line in the postcard would be to love mercy, which has come to have a deep and personal meaning for me. Life, as they say, is not always fair, and life does provide us with bumps in the road as we go through the journey of life. For me, one of my darkest hours was after having served as superintendent in a district for 10 years, working diligently, doing justly to make sure that we were providing a quality education for every student, including 50% of our students who were Hispanic. I found that our community and our school board were not overly supportive of that mission. One of the important skills of a superintendent is to learn to count. You have to be able to count to 3. In Seattle, you have to count to 4. If you have one board member that is not supportive, you take notice. If you have 2 board members that are not supportive, you pay more attention. And if you have 3, in our case 4 board members who are not supportive, you make like a parade and get in front of the line and leave town. And I did that, thinking that another opportunity would come to the fore. And I went through a number of years where I was not a superintendent. And during that time, I was angry at God, angry at the world, depressed, not pleasant to be around. Thanks to a very loving and patient wife, a very merciful God, I came through those times. And I did that through God's mercy. Can't see this. Actually, it has coffee stains on the back of it. It's one of these packs of note cards. And every one of them has a promise from God that I went through on a daily basis for many years. And there's handwritten notes in here of challenges that I embraced and answers for prayers that God had provided. So when I've read this verse before, it's kind of like do justly and be merciful. But it doesn't say that. It says do justice and love mercy. And I think first and foremost for ourselves and then for others. So mercy is God's compassion to us. Learn to receive it gratefully and give it generously. Line 4 is to walk humbly with God. And as I said, I've had to relearn that lesson many times over my career. I don't think that's what being a lifelong learner is intended to mean. I, 4 years ago, was superintendent in Marysville. We were having success. And one of those bumps in the road came along where we had a family health crisis. and after much prayerful consideration, determined that it was time for me to retire, which I did, figuring that I would be moving to a new part of life's journey. During that time, I read a book by Bruce Wilkinson, The Dream Giver, and had heard that he had been instrumental in the lives of many as they came to crossroads in life. And I called him up to talk with him about what he was doing and what my future might be. And his response was, God is not through with you yet. Convergence is what he wants to do. He wants to take everything that he's poured into your life and put it to use. I hung up the phone, thought, wow, that's interesting. Told my wife, she said, get over yourself. I think she was thinking more about somebody will help me remember the birthdays, and that back deck in the backyard might finally get fixed. Well, a few months after that, Seattle called and asked if I would be superintendent in Seattle. An opportunity that I would not have been available for a few months before that. And for those of you who follow the news in Seattle, Seattle Superintendency is a daily opportunity to be humbled. And I am delighted to be back in Seattle, serving the city I love and the city where I graduated, and doing this important work of doing justly and finding ways to close gaps for each and every one of our students. Some days I feel that God has done literally that he has poured into my life so many opportunities that prepare me for what I face as superintendent in Seattle. And other days I look at the agenda and say there's no way but for God's grace, God's mercy, and God's direction. So the postcard from life is to go with God, be open to his leading. And I would close with a blessing from the book of Isaiah. If you pour yourself out for the hungry and care for the afflicted, then your light will blaze like the noonday sun. The Lord will guide you always, satisfy your desires in difficult places, strengthen you, refresh you like a well-watered garden. Then you will rebuild and raise up. You will be called repairer and restorer. Then you will find joy in the Lord. You now stand in a grand tradition of Seattle Pacific graduates. I congratulate you on your well-earned recognition. If you want an off-road adventure with God, go with God, engage the community, change the world.